Chapter 51 Inuzuka Claw. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yitsang unleashed a pyroblast, instantly engulfing several Konoha ninja who were too slow to react. A massive explosion erupted, and the resulting heat wave sent Inuzuka Claw and other Konoha ninja flying. They scrambled to their feet, scattering in all directions, not even daring to look back. Yitsang cackled maniacally and teleported forward, several scorching fireballs swirling around him. Burning style, steam kill. Yitsang flashed past the remaining Konoha ninja. They barely had time to draw their kunai before realizing, to their horror, that their bodies were rapidly drying out. Amidst screams of terror and desperate roars, the moisture was instantly evaporated from their bodies, leaving them as mummified corpses. Moving with grace, Yitsang blocked the path and grinned at the last survivor of the team. The Inuzuka woman had seen through his stealth and was agile enough to avoid his attacks. He figured he could have some fun with her. There was no fighting to be heard in the distance. As long as he was here, Luo Sha wouldn't send any more grunts to Area 8. He figured he had time. Yitsang had no interest in checking in early, joining the Suna ninja army, or being a pawn for Luo Suna. Inuzuka Claw, who had managed to dodge 2 attacks through agility and sheer luck, gulped, as did Kuramaru. When you run into a Kage-level warrior out in the sticks, you start with your dog. Looks like we gotta fight. Don't underestimate the women of the Inuzuka clan, Suna ninja. Inuzuka growled, her face grim. Aha, I'm waiting, Yitsang replied lazily. Inuzuka Claw wove several hand signs, channeling chakra into her limbs. Her nails elongated, and she dropped to all fours, assuming a beast-like posture. Kuramaru stood ready, awaiting his master's command. Beast Mimicry Ninjutsu, 4 legs technique. Kuramaru instantly transformed, mirroring Inuzuka Claw's form. Oh, now I can't tell which one is you and which one is the dog. Yitsang watched Inuzuka Claw's ninjutsu with feigned interest. The 2 Inuzuka Claws went pale, glaring at Yitsang through gritted teeth. The duo shouted in unison, no matter who you are, our fangs are itching for a fight. Take this. Fong passing Fong. They leapt forward, spinning rapidly like twin tornadoes, hurtling towards Yitsang. Haha. Yitsang toyed with the kunai in his hand, manipulating the fireballs around him to attack Inuzuka Claw and Kuramaru. Whoa! The 2 tornadoes closed in, but just as they were about to collide with the fireballs, they abruptly swerved, passing by Yitsang. The wind ruffled Yitsang's hair. The sudden change in direction put him on edge. He quickly moved the fireballs to defend himself, turning to face Inuzuka Claw and Kuramaru. He saw the Inuzuka Claws land on all fours, seamlessly transitioning into the 4 legs technique, running across the ground like wild beasts. Kuramaru didn't even have time to dispel the transformation, simply following Inuzuka Claw's lead, booking it. The woman and her dog were running away. Running, me, Inuzuka Claw, known in Konoha for being forthright and bold, willing to bare my fangs at anyone. Did the Suna Kunoichi really think I was stupid? Scorch release Yitsang, did you think I didn't know who you are? It was only right to run back to camp and rejoin my comrades. No time to feel angry and sad for the fallen. Inuzuka Claw sprinted with everything she had. He. Yitsang chuckled, watching Inuzuka Claw flee, the veins in his forehead throbbing, channeling wind-release chakra into his feet. Yitsang's speed skyrocketed, and he surged toward Inuzuka Claw. Today, he was going to take out this Inuzuka clan member. No one would stop him, period. 1 chasing, 2 fleeing. Yitsang wasn't a speed specialist, relying on his powerful wind-release skills to keep pace with Inuzuka Claw, peppering her with fireballs. The Inuzuka clan's 4 legs technique was proving invaluable, greatly enhancing Inuzuka Claw's agility and speed. Despite the prolonged chase, they were still keeping some distance between them and Yitsang, but as time wore on, Inuzuka Claw's physical strength and chakra began to dwindle, and the gap between them was shrinking. While Inuzuka Claw might have possessed a slight edge in speed and burst power compared to Hayakura, in this drawn-out war of attrition, the one with the greater chakra reserves clearly had the upper hand. As a special reconnaissance jonin, Inuzuka Claw couldn't match the chakra. Reserves of a Kage-level nin such as Hayakura, if this kept up, she'd be caught sooner or later. My poor little puppy I had last year won't be able to see her mother. just as Inuzuka Claw was despairing, her nose picked up a slightly familiar scent, that chakra signature. It was a Konoha ninja. Had the camp sent a rescue team? Inuzuka Claw perked up, sniffing intently. Wait a minute, a strange expression crossed Inuzuka Claw's face. The Konoha ninja ahead was running in the same direction as she was, towards the camp, probably a patrol force that had to retreat urgently, which is why they were up front. Inuzuka Claw sighed inwardly. Right, the camp was probably focused on defense. How could they spare rescue troops? Just as Inuzuka Claw shook her head and smiled bitterly, Kuramaru suddenly barked, "Watch out!" Huh! Before Inuzuka Claw could react, she heard Kuramaru's warning and leaped forward, acting on instinct. Before she hit the ground, she felt a searing, fiery sensation on her back, followed by a powerful force that sent her flying. Yitsang had seized the opening, exploiting Inuzuka Claw's momentary lapse in concentration to land a direct hit with a fireball. Too bad the dog's warning saved her from certain death. But it's only a matter of time. The corners of his mouth curled upward, and Yitsang was elated. With a wave of his hand, a fireball roared towards Inuzuka Claw. Lying on the ground, Inuzuka Claw felt like her body was falling apart. She tried to get up, but she was spent. Unlike ordinary burns, Inuzuka Claw's back muscles were charred and shriveled, as if roasted. The backlash alone was devastating, a scorch-release attack capable of instantly evaporating the moisture from an enemy's body. Whoosh! At the critical moment, Kuramaru charged towards Inuzuka Claw without hesitation, seized her with his jaws, and flung her onto his back, hoisting her up. Then he abruptly stopped, pivoted, and charged forward, the roaring fireball detonating in the open space behind him. "You're not leaving before I die." Kuramaru snarled, his deep voice surprisingly authoritative, his single visible eye blazing with defiance. "Oh, thank you, Kuramaru." With that, Inuzuka Claw lost consciousness. "Hang on tight." Kuramaru channeled chakra through his body, his speed increasing despite Inuzuka Claw's weight, and charged straight ahead. His nose told him that Konoha ninja were ahead. It's a given that adult large dogs generally run faster than adults, not to mention this was a ninja dog with chakra. Damn it! Seeing his prey slip away, Yitsang was frustrated. He pushed his speed to the limit, pursuing Kuramaru relentlessly, unleashing a barrage of fireballs in retaliation. Kuramaru dodged frantically, holding Inuzuka Claw securely on his back, the gap between him and the Konoha ninja ahead closing rapidly. Finally, their backs came into clear view, retreating with everything they had, in the same direction as Kuramaru. Chapter 52 Meeting Yitsang again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kuramaru's face fell. They had to try to save him. "Hold up, Konoha ninjas!" Kuramaru yelled, his voice echoing with the rumbling explosion behind him. The Konoha ninjas he was shouting at were none other than Umino Squad, Umino, Kakugi, Komatetsu, and Kenfang. The sound of the approaching ninjutsu definitely reached them. Initially, Umino figured he could cut his losses, but as the noise got closer, his expression turned serious. The attack was coming fast. They were pushing as hard as they could, but the distance between them and the pursuers was shrinking rapidly. Hagura, at the Kage level, and Inuzuka Kuma with Kuramaru, gifted with agility, were simply too fast. Finally, with Kuramaru's shout, Umino knew a fight was unavoidable. Using his summoning technique, he called a ninja hawk, quickly scribbled a message, and sent it off. He glanced back towards the Konoha camp, then turned and stopped. The message read, "Umino Squad has encountered the Suna Ninja Vanguard and will fight to the death." The four ninjas stood their ground, determination etched on their faces. They would face what was coming head-on, ready to take on the Sand Ninja Vanguard force. Seeing them stop, Kuramaru felt a surge of hope and picked up his pace. Almost there. With a tight turn, Kuramaru planted his paws on the ground, grinning at Yagura, who was closing in. "This is Konoha's special jounin, Inuzuka Claw. Konoha ninjas, get her back to camp. I'll hold them off." But he didn't notice the strange looks on Umino's team's faces. Kakugi and Kenfang had assumed the voice came from a Konoha ninja behind them, only to realize it was a talking dog. Umino and Kyuubi knew exactly who the person and the dog were. "Claw. Kuramaru. Sis Claw." Kuramaru froze, recognizing the voices. He looked back, surprised. Ikaku-san. Kyuumate-san. Perfect. Running into you here. You guys get Claw out of here. I'll take care of the enemy. He refocused his attention on Yagura. No way, Umino replied, startling Kuramaru. I know the guy behind him. That's Yitsang from Sand, with his lava style. A mutt like you won't stand a chance. Kuramaru found Umino's attitude strange. Just as he was about to bare his teeth, a hand landed on his head. Take Claw and go. Leave Yitsang to me. Umino's tone was even more unfamiliar. He was usually dependable, but never this imposing. Kuramaru stood there, stunned. Don't just stand there. Komatetsu said, glancing at Inuzuka Claw's injuries. If we don't hurry, her injuries could get serious. Right. Kanfong hurried over to treat her, but Umino stopped him. Kanfong, go with Kuramaru and use your medical ninjutsu on the move. We can't wait any longer. Okay. Kanfong wanted to stay, but he knew Claw needed immediate attention, and he was the only one who could provide it. Kakugi stepped forward, exchanging determined glances with his father and Komatetsu. No words needed. Kuramaru hoisted Inuzuka on his back and left with a grateful nod. Han Fong solemnly said goodbye and left. Yitsang noticed the exchange. He was surprised the Konoha ninjas, who had been running scared, had decided to stand their ground. On closer inspection, he recognized them. Yitsang slowed down and approached cautiously. With each step, fireballs floated around him, creating an intimidating aura. The three ninjas stood defiantly in the road. This guy means business. Komatetsu's forehead was beaded with sweat. Don't worry, Umino laughed, we'll take him down. Asterisk like you know how to beat him, asterisk Kakugi thought, rolling his eyes. Dad, you know Inuzuka Claw? Yeah, when I first made Jonin, she was under my command for a year. She moved to recon later, but we worked together a lot. Umino glanced teasingly at Komatetsu. I even dragged him along when I begged for Yukimaru, Komatetsu's ninja dog. Yukimaru. Kakugi remembered the dog well. He was always curious where Komatetsu signed the contract. But Kakugi caught his father's teasing look and drew out the word. We just asked for a ninja dog, why did we have to call her Sister Claw? Cough. Cough. Komatetsu, flustered, coughed to interrupt. Umino chuckled. Just a friendly reminder, Inuzuka Claw has a sister named Ren who lives with her. Umino touched his chin, pretending to think. Let me see. I think she's around 16 this year. Wow, what a coincidence, that's how old someone is. Hey, I'm just saying. Komatetsu, usually quick-witted, was speechless, his face turning red. He. Kakugi and his father exchanged glances and laughed wickedly. Are those your last words? You all seem real close. Yitsang arrived, surrounded by dozens of fireballs. No, we're deciding what to eat after we beat you. Komatetsu answered seriously. When it came to arguing, Komatetsu was back on his game. Oh, so you think you'll have a say in that? Go to hell. Yitsang's expression twisted, and he flung several fireballs at the three ninjas. Yitsang still hadn't gotten over his failure to ambush the transport team. He now faced the water-style user from that incident in Kakugi, who killed Kuroki Hayabusa. What a reunion of enemies. Kuroki Hayabusa might have been one of Yitsang's many admirers. He was the only one who always showed up when she needed him. Yitsang hadn't really had feelings for him until he died. Only then did she realize he held a place in her heart. Seeing Kakugi, the one who killed Kuroki, only fueled her anger. Chapter 53. Let's go shoulder to shoulder. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Several fireballs hurtled toward them, and everyone knew this was no time to slack off. Kakugi's grin vanished as his hands blurred through a series of hand signs. Water style, water formation wall. A solid wall of water erupted from the ground, blocking the incoming fireballs. The fireballs slammed into the wall, hissing as they cooled, and the water evaporated, creating a cloud of steam. Water style, exploding water wave. Using the steam as cover, Umino rapidly weaved signs, then spewed a massive torrent of water from his mouth, forming a powerful surging wave. Seeing the wave approach, Yitsang quickly conjured fireballs to shield herself, retreating fast. Lightning style, instant transmission. Bare Hand drew his long knife, channeling lightning chakra into his legs to activate the teleportation technique. The combination strained his legs, but it was worth it. Now, Bare Hand was as fast as lightning. He vanished in a flash, appearing instantly above the onrushing wave. He lightly tapped his feet on the water and disappeared again. This time, Bare Hand materialized right in front of Yitsang, gripping the knife with both hands, lightning crackling around the blade. He swung down with all his might. Thunder blade. Yitsang vanished, and Bare Hand's blade sliced through the air, nearly causing him to stumble. Seeing Yitsang retreat again, Bare Hand immediately resheathed his sword, leaped back, and rejoined the wave. He quickly formed a few hand seals and pressed his hands toward the water. Lightning style, earth flow. The turbulent wave, shimmering with lightning, surged toward Yitsang. Yitsang stood firm, raising one hand above her head as a massive scorch-style chakra gathered rapidly, forming a huge fireball in the blink of an eye. Scorch style, fire explosion. She swung her hand forward, and the massive fireball collided with the wave in a violent explosion. The wave's momentum was halted, a deafening roar filled the air, and a cloud of vapor instantly blanketed the forest. Water rained down as Yitsang leaped onto a tree, the branches providing perfect cover. She clutched a kunai in one hand, fireballs floating around her, ready to defend. With visibility limited, it was better to wait for the smoke to clear than blindly attack. She had to be ready for a surprise attack. This was a well-coordinated team, at least special Jonin level. Their initial combo had actually put them slightly ahead, but eventually, she'd overpower them. She just needed to wait for her chance. Yitsang was right to be cautious, but she didn't realize that Kakugi possessed sensory abilities. He pinpointed Yitsang's location. Kakugi nodded to Bare Hand and Umino, using the teleportation technique to charge ahead. Gotcha! Yitsang, perched in the tree, suddenly saw a figure leaping toward her. A knife blade, shimmering with wind chakra, was aimed straight at her. Yitsang swung her kunai to block, but in an instant, it shattered. The ninja sword was infused with wind release chakra. With the blade inches from her face, Yitsang hurriedly jumped back to the ground, which was now like a small lake. The waves from the exploding water had subsided somewhat, but even after the scorch style, there was still plenty of water. As a Kage-level ninja, Yitsang knew how to walk on water, channeling chakra to her feet to stay afloat. She then saw a masked guy smiling at her, as if he had been waiting for her to land. He placed his hands on the water, beginning again. Lightning style, earth flow. Several beams of lightning, using the water as a conduit, struck Yitsang instantly. Damn it! Yitsang retreated quickly, tossing a fireball into the water to disrupt the lightning. She hated water ninjas. Especially elite teams with 2 water users and 1 lightning user. Even though she was stronger, this kind of fight was frustrating. This was happening again. And it was the same guys. Yitsang was starting to get annoyed. As soon as she landed back on the water, a deep voice echoed in her ears. Water style, water fang blade. It was Umino. He had anticipated her landing spot, teleporting behind her, wielding 2 water fang blades. He slashed at Yitsang, trying to cut her to pieces. Crap! Yitsang's expression hardened as she shouted. The fireballs around her rotated rapidly to intercept Umino's surprise attack. The flames of the fireballs intensified suddenly, and Umino realized that his water fang blades were melting rapidly. Kakugi and Bare Hand also rushed in, attacking Yitsang from either side with their ninja swords. Yitsang repeated her trick, sending the fireballs to intercept their attacks. Seeing this, Umino knew the element of surprise was lost and yelled, "Scatter!" He pulled back his sword and leaped away. Tsang smirked. She raised one hand, pointing her index and middle fingers like a sword, and said softly, "Explode." The fireballs blocking the 3 ninjas' attacks suddenly expanded rapidly. Kakugi's pupils shrank to pinpoints as he dropped his sword without hesitation and leaped backward. Get out! The fireball grew rapidly, swallowing Kakugi's ninja sword in an instant. Umino immediately released the water fang blade technique and retreated using the body flicker technique. Bare Hand dropped his ninja sword, reacting a little too late, and was about to be engulfed by the expanding fireball. Grab on! Kakugi grabbed Bare Hand's collar and activated the teleportation technique. Boom! The fireballs surrounding the three ninjas emitted a terrifying red light, exploding in their horrified eyes. The shockwave spread quickly, kicking up a cloud of dust and smoke. Yitsang stood in the center, one hand on her hip, unmoving. Even a scorch-style explosion was harmless to her. Yitsang's control over scorch-style was absolute. Umino and Kakugi, who had reacted the fastest, weren't seriously injured, but they were definitely singed. Bare Hand was in much worse shape. Before Kakugi could even set him down, he cried out in pain. Bare Hand's left hand and left foot had brushed the edge of the fireball's explosion, leaving them charred black. Even though it was just a glancing blow, he had suffered such severe burns that all the moisture in his hand and foot had evaporated instantly. What a devastating scorch style. Seeing that Bare Hand couldn't continue fighting, Kakugi slung him over his back, using the dust and smoke as cover, teleporting them beneath a distant tree. Leaning against the trunk, he propped Bare Hand in place and reached out, gently pinching the injured part of his hand. Arg. Oh. 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 Bare Hand's veins bulged as he howled. What are you doing? Kakugi smiled cheerfully and nodded to Bare Hand. It's good that it hurts. It means your hand and foot weren't destroyed completely, so there's still a chance they can recover. Don't worry, I'll treat you when we get back. Bare Hand, sweating from the pain, gritted his teeth and said, thank you. I'm fine now. Go help the sensei, quick. What are you waiting for? Go. Chapter 54 Falling into a Fierce Battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kakugi quickly bandaged Kyuubi, gave him an encouraging pat on the shoulder, and left. Kyuubi glared at Kakumu, then looked away. Kakumu walked off, and Kyuubi sighed, looking defeated and lonely. He fumbled in his ninja pouch for hemostatic pills and soldier rations, and gulped them down. He pulled out a kunai and a detonating tag, bit down on the kunai, and started wrapping the tag around it. One by one, he used up all the detonating tags. He then took out all the shurikens and the other 2 kunai from his pouch, stacking them together with the detonating tag-wrapped kunai, placing them all within easy reach. With that done, Xiong leaned his head back against the tree trunk, looked up at the sky, and sighed heavily. His arms and legs were useless, he couldn't use ninjutsu, and he couldn't move. This was all he could do. In the distance, the dust and smoke were starting to clear, and Umino Iruka was locked in a tense battle with Yitsang. Having learned his lesson from their earlier encounter, Umino Iruka was avoiding close combat, relying solely on ninjutsu to fight Yitsang. Thanks to the lake he'd created with the water blast at the start of the battle, Umino Iruka was in a good position and keeping busy. One moment a water whip lashed out, the next moment a lightning strike crackled, both interrupting Yitsang's attacks and preventing her from finishing off Xiong. This fight was different from the last one. Back then, Yitsang had a large number of Sunagakure ninjas around, forcing her to hold back to avoid friendly fire and focus on supporting her teammates. This time, Yitsang was alone, with nothing to hold her back. She responded to Umino's annoying tricks with fireballs, and when she felt like it, she'd just use a pyroblast. As Yitsang attacked without holding back, the water level around them noticeably dropped. On the surface, it looked like Umino Iruka was holding his own against Yitsang, but in reality, Yitsang was toying with him, and Umino Iruka was struggling to survive. If this kept up, things would go south fast. After leaving Xiong, Kakugi hurried to the scene. On the way, he analyzed Yitsang's stats. Name, Yitsang, overall combat power, S+, chakra level, 4.0 calories, attributes, wind, fire. She was a shadow-level powerhouse for sure. Without the yang attribute, her chakra level was still higher than Umino Iruka's, who did have the yang attribute. She was almost on par with him, even with his system hacks. On his side, Kazuoki was B+ and Umino Iruka was A. Kakumu chuckled to himself. Were they a kind of A-B combo? He wondered how Yitsang would fare against S+. One thing was for sure, this wasn't going to be an easy fight. Seeing the water dwindling, Kakugi decided he couldn't give up on limiting Yitsang in any way possible. He winked at his father and began weaving hand signs rapidly. Water style, exploding water wave. Kakugi unleashed his chakra to the max. With the additional power, this ninjutsu was even stronger than Umino Ikuka's. Hearing the voice behind her, Yitsang turned to see a massive wave heading her way. Seriously? You two, father and son, are really going all out, huh? Yitsang thought, cursing inwardly, and jumped out of the way. Water style, water flow whip. After a quick glance between father and son, Umino Ikuka began preparing his attack, launching it as Yitsang jumped. Several water whips ensnared Yitsang's legs the moment she was airborne. They yanked her back to the ground with overwhelming force. Humph! Without a word, Yitsang activated the fireballs around her to strike the water. It was just a water whip, it would be gone once it evaporated. Umino Ikuka chuckled. Did she really think it would be that easy? Lightning release and earth walking was a solid ninjutsu, and combined with water release, it could produce a serious shock therapy effect, and it only required 3 seals. A seasoned jonin could complete those seals and activate the jutsu in under a second. Lightning style, earth walk. Naive. Do you think you can trap me with just that? Yitsang controlled a fireball to slam into her feet. The intense heat instantly evaporated the water whip under her feet, and Yitsang used the opportunity to jump up again. Umino's lightning escape attack was long overdue by this point. As Yitsang jumped, the fireball that landed on the water began to expand, glowing a faint red. Boom! The fireball exploded upon contact with the water. The surface where Yitsang had been standing was momentarily blasted into a vacuum. In an instant, water rushed in from all directions. It may sound like a long story, but these exchanges took only seconds. Battles between masters often happen in the blink of an eye and are incredibly dangerous. Just like now, to avoid the impact of the explosive wave behind her, Yitsang jumped, aiming for a nearby tree. Her body was caught mid-air, where her momentum was spent, and she hadn't yet gained a new foothold. It was a weakness, but with Yitsang's skill at teleportation and the fireballs constantly circling her for protection, ordinary people couldn't exploit it. Unless the opponent was a master like the second Hokage Senju Tobarama, who specialized in catching opponents off guard and flying. Thunder God Technique. It just so happened that while Kakumu couldn't use Flying Thunder God, he was pretty good at capitalizing on opportunities. Thanks to the unspoken understanding between father and son, Kakugi had already prepared for this attack. Wind style, vacuum blade. A huge burst of wind-style chakra shot from his mouth onto a kunai, instantly transforming it into a wind blade over 2 meters long. Locking onto Yitsang's position using his senses, he used the body flicker technique to jump and slash at her. Kasaya cutter. Yitsang instinctively summoned a fireball to defend herself, but unlike normal blades, the super-sharp wind blade was able to cut right through the scorch-release fireball. What? Even for Yitsang, this was a first. It wasn't that she had never seen wind-release ninjutsu that could cut through her scorch-release, but the wind blade stretching over 2 meters was a bit much. Fortunately, Yitsang always had a backup plan. Explode. The fireball struck by the wind blade exploded instantly, and Kakugi's eyes widened. There was nothing to push off from in mid-air, and he couldn't use Flying Thunder God technique. An ordinary body flicker was useless, and it was too late to use substitution technique. Boom! The fireball exploded in mid-air, instantly engulfing Kakumu. Poof! The Kakumu figure surrounded by the fireball turned into a puff of white smoke. Shadow clone. Yitsang landed on the treetop and stared, speechless. Kakumu, back on the water, stared at Yitsang with lingering fear. He'd learned from Xiongshou's mistake and had been cautious. He'd even allocated 1 card of chakra to the shadow clone just to allow it to activate the vacuum blade. Now, the shadow clone had dissipated after the attack, and all that chakra was gone. Between the previous ninjutsu and battles, Kakumu only had a little more than half of his chakra left. After their quick exchange, Yitsang was unscathed and safely on the treetop. Instead, the father and son had wasted a lot of chakra for nothing. The situation looked favorable, but they had been outplayed. Yitsang crouched on the treetop and looked at Umino and his son with a mix of emotions. Far from the pushovers she had expected, This team had unparalleled teamwork, they had lost a man, and she had almost been taken down just now. But there was no denying that these Konoha ninja had repeatedly frustrated her. Yitsang stared at the father and son and said seriously. I didn't expect you to be this capable. In that case, it would be rude of me not to put in my best effort. As Yitsang spoke, fireballs appeared around her, one after another, at a dizzying rate. Scorch release, burning flame fall. Chapter 55 The fierce battle continues. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The move lived up to its name. In seconds, burning fireballs swirled around Yitsang, with a double-handed wave. It was like a meteor shower or a goddess scattering petals, a downpour of flaming balls. Target? The whole damn lake. Yitsang had already evaporated a good chunk of Umino's little lake, and Kakugi's water blast had only temporarily refilled it, but this meteor shower would vaporize any lake, no matter how big. So this is film-level power. Turns out the gap between us is this huge. Umino Ikuku stood there, stunned, just staring at the fireballs raining down. Wait a minute. What about Kakugi? Where's my idiot son? He glanced over and saw Kakugi still standing there, going through the motions of a seal. Idiot. No jutsu can stop this thing. Umino Ikuku teleported next to Kakugi. Dummy, why aren't you running? Just then. Water style. Who will build the dam? Umino Ikuku blinked. Did my blockhead kid just pull off that jutsu? Kakugi, a rising star in the ninja world, wasn't as bummed out as Umino Ikuku. As soon as he saw the fireballs forming around Yitsang, he knew what was coming. Without a word, he started blazing through the hand seals. The big explosive water rush wave and the water breaking wave were his two best water style moves. Unlike the tricky water breaking wave, the big explosive water rush wave was only limited by chakra. Even though Umino Ikuku had a decent chakra pool, he always hesitated to use the explosive water rush wave. Kakugi had already burned through almost half his chakra, so he wasn't exactly swimming in the stuff right now, but screw it, this wasn't the time to be stingy. He unleashed a torrent far bigger than the explosive water rush wave. If that jutsu made a lake, this one made a damn ocean. Unfortunately, Kakugi didn't have time to admire his handiwork. He saw his old man teleporting over, looking totally lost. With another teleport, he grabbed his dad and dragged him underwater. Boom! The first fireball hit just as they went under, then came the rest, slamming into the surface. The heat instantly turned the water to steam. As each fireball plunged deeper, the water around it superheated. Soon the whole lake was bubbling, boiling. Even with Kakugi's massive water release, the level was dropping fast. The whole forest was filled with thick vapor. If there were fish in there, they were now cooked fish. Yitsang, having unleashed every last fireball, surveyed the damage with a satisfied smirk. It cost a ton of chakra, and he only had half the reserves he used to, but against a nasty water ninja like this, you had to go for the knockout. He perched on a thick branch, crossed his legs, and waited for the water to evaporate, revealing the two boiled fish. Once he confirmed those water-slinging punks were dead, he'd mop up the other rats. But as the water level dropped and the bottom started to show, there was no sign of Umino or his son. Where the heck did they go? Yitsang frowned, then he spotted a huge hole in the ground and his eyes narrowed. He was just about to get his guard up when he heard a roar behind him. Water style, water mayhem. A huge ball of water hurtled toward Yitsang's back. He teleported to safety, barely managing to throw up a fireball to soften the blow. Spinning around, he saw Umino Ikuku standing next to a big gaping hole. So, after diving underwater, Kakugi must have pulled some trick to escape. He never expected Yitsang's jutsu to be so powerful. Even submerged, they could feel the intense heat. If they stayed down there, they'd be boiled alive. That's when Kakugi had an idea. He let go of his dad and started snapping through hand seals. Gotta hurry, or we're toast. Thankfully, the jutsu was pretty simple and he finished it fast. He pointed his hand at the lake bed and activated the technique. Earth style, Earth Dragon hidden technique. He burrowed into the ground and yanked his dad in with him. As they tunneled, the unstable ground collapsed, and water poured in. His dad didn't know how to escape, so Kakugi had to hold his father with one hand and dig forward with the other, hoping to dig out the ground before he was drowned in the tunnel. Finally, Kakugi broke through, and the underwater tunnel was complete. Kakugi sensed that the tunnel exit was arranged not far behind Yitsang. They used breath-holding techniques, and Yitsang, riding high on his perceived victory, was none the wiser. After a quick exchange of glances, Kakugi used the Earth Dragon hidden jutsu again and lurked elsewhere. Umino Iruka sighed. His son had grown up, he'd become a ninja as good as him. Thinking back to Kakugi's massive water blast, Umino Iruka puffed out his chest. Hell, his chakra control might even be better than mine. Focusing again, Umino Iruka burst out of the hole and unleashed his ninjutsu. Boom! That fireball met water bomb, and Yitsang's hastily made defense was blown apart. He tried to dodge, but the blast still sent him sprawling. The ground, only recently dry, was now a muddy mess. Damn water ninjas! Yitsang, who had taken some secret loss, could no longer suppress his inner anger and directly cursed. Even in the battles in Kirigakure, I have never encountered several such disgusting water escape ninjas. The ninjas of Kirigakure mostly use Kirigakure's jutsu to carry out sneak attacks and assassinations, and large-scale water escape ninjutsu is often used as a sure kill method. How is it like the two Konoha people in front of me, who are performing large-scale water escape ninjutsu one after another, and chakra is free of charge? He obviously only has the strength of a jonin, but he has the chakra of an elite jonin or even a Kage-level ninja. What kind of weirdos are these? After venting his frustration, Yitsang glared around, wary. Can't let my guard down, there's still that kid out there, whoosh, star, the sound of the instant body technique. Yitsang instinctively whirled around, raising a kunai. His kunai clashed against another. It was that brat, Umino Kakugi. This kid's kinda weak. Yitsang thought, sizing him up. The kid had decent taijutsu, making it hard to focus on gathering fireballs for a big jutsu. If I can't create some distance, I'm stuck in a fistfight, but his strength is only average. Chapter 56 Self-Destruction Again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hold on, not so fast. Don't forget about Umino Iruka. Just as she had that thought, she spotted Umino Iruka barreling towards her, hands already forming seals. Alright, let's take care of something simple first. That with both enemies in sight, Yitsang steeled herself and deliberately left an opening for Kakugi. Kakugi lunged, aiming a kunai at Yitsang's neck. In a flash, Yitsang ducked low and thrust her own kunai forward. Whoa! Kakugi got hit, but no blood spilled. Instead, he dissolved into a puddle of water. A water clone. Yitsang thought, surprised. Where's the real him? Water prison jutsu. A voice tried to sound menacing. Crap, Yitsang's pupils constricted. She tried to react, but it was too late. Water erupted from the ground, swirling with incredible speed into a perfect sphere, trapping Yitsang inside. The Real Kakugi stood outside the water prison, one hand plunged into the sphere, sealing Yitsang tight. After barely escaping Yitsang's big move, Kakugi and his father had hatched this plan. Kakugi would first use earth-style jutsu to lie in wait underground. Umino Iruka would use ninjutsu to knock Hayakura off balance. Then, Kakugi would unleash a water clone to distract Yitsang and lull her into a false sense of security. Next, Umino Iruka would rush into view, further lowering Yitsang's guard. Finally, Kakugi would teleport in and trap Yitsang with the water prison jutsu. The water prison jutsu does exactly what it sounds like. It creates a cage of water infused with the caster's chakra. The prison itself is pure chakra, not water. Yitsang could breathe inside, but eventually, the oxygen would run out, and she'd suffocate, and because the caster had to keep a hand inside, constantly feeding chakra into the prison, it was practically impossible for the trapped person to break free from the inside, unless they had mastered a technique like the gentle fist, which could disrupt the chakra flow. The prison was unbreakable. With her experience as a shadow-level ninja, Yitsang knew all this. She glared at Umino Iruka, who was advancing with a fierce look in his 3-foot-long Suigao blade. Was she just supposed to sit there and wait to die? Was she really going to be taken out by something as basic as the water prison jutsu? Even Kuroki Hayabusa had fallen to an S-rank water jutsu. No way. She was Zhuoun Yitsang, damn it. Yitsang gritted her teeth, her face contorted, her eyes burning with resolve. Orange-red burning release chakra began to gather rapidly in her hands. Kakugi's eyes widened. Was this chick really going for a suicide attack? He couldn't let that happen. This was the perfect chance to eliminate Yitsang. Do it. Dad. On it. Umino Iruka knew what to do. Without waiting for Kakugi to urge him on, he channeled lightning chakra into his legs, teleporting forward at full speed. Umino Iruka plunged the water fong blade into the water prison. Yitsang didn't even flinch, a manic glint in her eyes. The fireball in her hand was fully formed, its orange-red glow bathing the water prison in light. The sharp blade pierced Yitsang's lower abdomen, the tip emerging from her back. Blood gurgled from her mouth. Yitsang laughed, a wild, unhinged sound. She looked at her attackers and grinned. She shoved the fireball forward, screaming, "Go to hell." Burning release, pyroblast. Umino's eyes went wide. He yanked his hand from the water prison and teleported back. Kakugi did the same, immediately releasing his hold and activating the teleportation technique. Yitsang, using chakra to strengthen her legs, leaped backward. While she was confident in her control over burning release, even she wasn't stupid enough to stick around for a point-blank explosion. After all, she was fighting to survive, not trying to die. But it was too late for all three of them. Boom! The fireball detonated the instant it left her hand, engulfing all three in the blast. The shockwave sent them flying. Luckily, the confined space of the water prison and Yitsang's hasty execution meant that the fireball wasn't huge. Plus, all three had tried their best to minimize the damage. Still, being that close to pyroblast had taken its toll. Yitsang had managed to angle the explosion, so she, closest to the source, suffered the least burns. Her most serious injury was the stab wound through her abdomen. Umino's face was blackened. Half his hair was singed off, and his eyebrows and beard were gone. His Jonin vest was charred and ripped. The arm he'd used to stab Yitsang was useless, a blackened husk. That was the signature of Yitsang's burning release. The intense heat scorched and evaporated everything in its path. Umino Iruka tried to lift his arm, but the pain was unbearable. The good news was that he could still feel something, meaning the limb wasn't completely dead. Like Kuma's hand, Umino Iruka's arm was charred on the outside, but still retained some function. There was still hope for medical ninjutsu to repair the damage. He owed that much to his quick thinking during Yitsang's self-destruction. Umino Iruka managed a weak smile. Even with the possibility of a cure, he was in bad shape. He glanced at Kakugi. Since the brunt of the explosion had been directed toward Umino, Kakugi had fared slightly better. His hair and eyebrows were also singed, and blood trickled from the corners of his mouth. His limbs were lightly burned, and his Chunin vest was shredded. A shallow, blackened hole marred his abdomen, wisps of black smoke rising from it. Luckily, the vest had absorbed most of the impact. Only his internal organs had been bruised, with some burning of the flesh and skin. Otherwise, things would have been much worse. Still, the shockwave had slammed Kakumu into a large tree. Now, his eyes rolled back in his head, and he lay unconscious. Unbeknownst to the comatose Kakumu, the system had sent him a message the instant he passed out. Ding! You have completed the battle with your opponent. Do you want to copy their skills? Y/N. Being unconscious, Kakumu was in no position to answer. Ahem. Umino Iruka struggled toward Kakugi, his entire body screaming in protest. Even the slightest movement sent jolts of pain to his brain. He forced himself forward, chuckling weakly at his own condition. In the distance, Yitsang was also stumbling toward Kakugi. Judging by her gait, she'd definitely taken a beating. With a dangerous enemy still in play, Umino Iruka knew he had to wake Kakugi up ASAP. As for Yitsang's intentions, those were pretty obvious. Finally, Umino Iruka reached his son. Hey, you little punk, what's the big idea, sleeping on the job? He drew a kunai with his left hand, assumed a defensive stance, and nudged his son with his foot, a wry smile on his face. He was already in a defensive position because Yitsang had arrived. Seeing the shape Yitsang was in, Umino almost burst out laughing, even in his current state. Chapter 57 Continue to Fight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Although Yitsang was the enemy, there was no denying she was gorgeous. Too bad that beauty was now cloaked in shadows, looking like a ninja from hidden cloud. The ends of her orange hair were singed, her bun falling apart, and the hair on the right side was almost completely burned away, exposing patches of scalp. Her legs and arms were burned to varying degrees. Oddly enough, her backless top, though scorched black, protected her front. What's so funny, that Yitsang clutched the wound on her side and abdomen with one hand, a kunai in the other, aimed at Umino. Her eyes blazed with murderous intent. Umino forced a wry smile. Kind of ironic, isn't it? The notorious scorch release Yitsang, and a nobody jounin like me, stuck in a mess like this. Yitsang didn't reply, her gaze fixed on Umino Ikaku, forehead veins bulging. Umino Ikaku turned his attention to the distance. The faint sounds of battle drifted closer, like the rising tide. The forces of Sunagakure and Konoha were already engaged. The Suna army didn't come this way. Is that because of you? Umino asked quietly. Yitsang remained silent. The real show's already started. No need for us to waste time here. I stabbed you, and you took my arm. Call it even, okay? Umino Ikaku took a shaky breath, staring at her, clutching the kunai in his hand. Yitsang's eyes widened. This was a new kind of Konoha ninja. He was practically begging for peace. She glanced sideways at the unconscious Tsunoki nearby, and suddenly understood. You're doing this for your son? Yitsang asked, watching Umino Ikaku's reaction. Umino Ikaku tensed for a moment, then relaxed. Yitsang saw it all. What a shame. You're a decent father, Yitsang sighed softly. I've been a ninja my whole life, but I want to try to do something that might break the rules. Too bad you waited too long to say it. Besides, your son, Umino Tsunoki, must die. 1 second, Yitsang was lamenting parenthood. The next, she spat out the words with venom, a vicious smile twisting her face. The hand covering his stomach slowly moved away. Instead of blood, a wisp of white smoke escaped. The smoke cleared, revealing smooth skin. Only a scar remained of Umino's attack. Umino Ikaku instantly tensed, channeling lightning release chakra into his kunai. He hurled it at Yitsang. Yitsang knew medical ninjutsu. And she was good. That hadn't been in the intel. If Umino Ikaku had known that Yitsang knew medical ninjutsu, he wouldn't have wasted his time talking. Now it was a deadly reminder. Yitsang easily dodged the kunai. No longer hunched over, she stood straight, one hand on her hip, fireballs gathering around her. If not for her charred appearance and crazy hairstyle, Yitsang would have looked almost as good as new. But as she stood upright, Yitsang swayed almost imperceptibly, something Umino Ikaku didn't catch. She was just trying to stay upright. While Yitsang knew some medical ninjutsu, she couldn't fully heal a penetrating wound that went all the way through. She'd stopped the bleeding and temporarily repaired the external wound, but the internal damage was still throbbing. It wasn't healed, and she could definitely feel the pain when she moved, but it wasn't debilitating enough to take out the target in front of her. Yitsang had to kill Umino Ikaku and Tsunoki, along with the injured Kumite, then she'd heal herself. She couldn't go back looking like this. Yitsang could practically see Luo Sha's smug grin. The Inuzuka woman who'd escaped had just gotten lucky. A water release ninja with one arm can still pull off amazing water release ninjutsu. Yitsang smiled sweetly at Umino, rushing towards him with a kunai. The fireballs followed her lead. Umino Ikaku felt a chill run down his spine at Yitsang's smile. His left hand made seals with difficulty, the water release chakra surging into his remaining hand. Water quickly gathered, forming a spinning jet. Umino Ikaku didn't know any fancy ninjutsu, and only a few techniques could be performed with one hand. Water Fong blade focused the water flow, powered by water release chakra, into a spinning jet. It demanded precise chakra control, but not complex hand seals. In this life-or-death moment, Umino Ikaku had to improvise. Fortunately, it worked. Water Fong blade. Umino Ikaku swung his arm, slicing a fireball in half and forcing Yitsang to retreat. Umino Ikaku let his arm fall, quickly channeling chakra to replenish the blade that had evaporated in the heat. He held it horizontally, a mocking smile on his face. A water escape ninja with one hand can also unleash amazing water escape ninjutsu. Humph, a cheap trick, Yi Cang sneered, summoning more scorching fireballs. Umino Ikuku's heart sank. After all this fighting, she still had chakra to spare. Kumite waited anxiously in the distance, unable to clearly see the battle, but the earlier display of ninjutsu had been intense. Umino-sensei and Tsunoki must be in deep trouble. The sounds of distant battles reached him. Kumite breathed a sigh of relief. Suna forces wouldn't be coming this way. They only had to deal with Yi Cang, but that was still a big problem. If only he wasn't injured, he could help. On the battlefield, Umino Ikuku fought desperately against Yi Cang. He realized that Yi Cang's injury hadn't healed, so he changed his tactics. Focusing on close combat, he aimed his attacks at Yi Cang's side and abdomen, dodging fireballs as they came. If the opening presented itself, he'd stab at the wound on her back. Yi Cang became increasingly irritable, each movement sending a jolt of pain through her side. Gradually, Umino Ikuku started to lose ground. Against a scorch-release user like Yi Cang, close-quarters combat was an uphill battle. Chapter 58 Awakening. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the distance, the Sunigakure and Konoha forces clashed in a full-blown battle. Raza chose Area 4, the quickest path to Konoha's main camp. Since Konoha was already aware of their presence, he needed to speed things up and end the fight quickly. Small groups of Konoha ninja repeatedly harassed and ambushed Sunigakure along the way, but they were simply overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemy troops. Even so, their sacrifices weren't in vain. They managed to slow down Sunigakure's advance. Dozens of Konoha ninja gave their lives to buy the Konoha camp valuable time. The 8,000-strong Sunigakure army finally converged outside Konoha's stronghold like a surging flood, but instead of the panicked, unprepared Konoha ninja they expected, they found a fully formed army of 4,500 Konoha troops waiting for them. Despite being severely outnumbered, the Konoha ninja were energized, their faces set and their eyes determined. Backed by their stronghold, Konoha had established layered defenses. The wooden stockade wall was no match for a ninja battle of this scale, so they used it for support to avoid being surrounded. The element of surprise was gone for Sunigakure. Seeing this, Raza couldn't help but lament the third Kazekage's failed efforts to deplete their chakra. Now Sunigakure faced a direct confrontation. The only silver lining was that the raid wasn't exposed beforehand, or Konoha's defenses would have been even stronger. It's all that idiot Tao Jingsha's fault. And Yi Cang too, Raza thought bitterly, glancing at Jiraiya across the battlefield. As old rivals, there was no need for formalities. Raza raised his hands, formed a seal, and plunged them into the earth. Magnetic release, golden sand wave. A massive wave of golden sand erupted from the ground, surging toward Konoha. Raza subtly gestured, and the Sunigakure troops charged forward under the cover of the sand, following the prearranged battle plan. Nearly 100 Konoha ninja simultaneously formed seals, standing firm against the approaching wall of sand. Earth release, earth flow rampart. The earth walls created by nearly 100 ninja combined to form a towering defensive structure, blocking the sand wave. The impact was immense, causing the Konoha ninja struggling to maintain their jutsu to nearly lose their footing. Eventually, the city wall began to crumble under the relentless force, and the sand wave lost its momentum, settling into a heap of rubble. With this initial clash of ninjutsu, the Sunigakure ninja had successfully reached Konoha's front lines, facing each other across the piles of yellow sand and broken walls. Kill! Someone yelled, and the ninja from both sides charged, initiating a brutal close-quarters fight. Ninjutsu and kunai flew through the air, and the cries of the wounded and dying filled the air. Raza kept a close eye on Jiraiya. In a battle of this magnitude, a Kage-level ninja was a game-changer. Their involvement would drastically shift the momentum. Jiraiya, in turn, watched Raza. If Raza entered the fray, Jiraiya would have to confront him. Despite his calm exterior, Jiraiya was deeply concerned. The Sunigakure forces outnumbered Konoha's almost 2-1. If the stalemate continued, Sunigakure would slowly gain the upper hand. Jiraiya watched with increasing anxiety as the situation grew more precarious. Kakumu felt like he was dreaming. He was flying, weightless and free. Eventually, he landed somewhere incredibly soft, surrounded by warmth, like a mother's embrace. the only downside was the persistent noise in his ears. He wanted to reach out and make it stop, but he couldn't bring himself to move. It was so comfortable here, his body and mind at ease. Was this paradise? The noise grew louder, sounding like a brutal fight and dying screams. Those sounds must be coming from hell. Kakumu decided to ignore it all, sinking deeper into the soft embrace, falling further and further. Until a clear ding broke through the noise. Why did that sound so familiar? Where had he heard it before? Whatever, he thought, it's fine just lying here. Ding! Ding! That the sound persisted, regardless of his wishes. Kakumu cracked open his eyelids, searching for the source. Everything was blurry. White light, red light, and darkness flickered in his vision. The sounds of fighting seemed to grow louder. Then, words appeared. You have completed the battle with your opponent. Do you want to copy their skills? Y/N. What was this? It was his system. Kakumu's eyes snapped open, the scene before him distorted and unreal. Where was he? Memories flooded back. Fragments of the past filled his mind, flashing before his eyes. A splitting headache seized Kakumu, and his thoughts came to a halt. Acting on instinct, he silently selected yes on the system prompt. The system responded. Ding! Successfully copied the skill, Master Level Scorch Release Mastery. The system has detected that the host has met the prerequisites for becoming a Scorch Release user, proficiency in wind and fire chakra nature and shape manipulation. Commencing body transformation. A searing heat suddenly erupted within Kakumu, a burning chakra surging through his meridians. It was as warm as the sun and as hot as fire. Ugh! The sudden influx of burning chakra overloaded Kakumu's system, and the small amount of chakra already present was quickly overwhelmed. His meridian swelled with pain from the new chakra, and he writhed on the ground. Kakumu. Umino Iruka heard the noise and shouted his son's name. He couldn't turn around. Yi-san would seize the opportunity to kill him. Even so, Yi-san capitalized on Umino Iruka's momentary distraction to inflict more wounds. Umino was at the end of his rope. His fight with Yi-san was a lost cause. He could only hope his son would wake up and run. Inuzuka Claw and Kenfong had already left, presumably to join the main formation. Kakumu spasmed a few times, then fell still, silent on the ground. The new wave of burning chakra subsided quickly, integrating seamlessly. Soon, the swelling and pain disappeared, replaced by a burning sensation throughout his body. As the system awakened and his body transformed, Kakumu gradually regained consciousness. All his memories returned, and his mind was clear. The soul had returned. The fully conscious Kakumu was keenly aware of the pain racking his body, especially in his abdomen, which felt like it was being roasted alive. But he didn't have time to dwell on it. He remembered hearing his father calling out to him while he was unconscious. Chapter 59, Blade Like Fire. You are listening at novelfull.audio. He snapped awake and struggled to sit up. His vision wasn't doubled anymore, but it was still blurry. Yi-san planted a kick in Umino Iruka's chest, sending him flying backward. A ferocious grin spread across Yi-san's face as she charged towards Umino. Fireballs orbited her, ready to strike Umino from all sides. Scorching release, steaming murder. Umino, struggling to his feet, straightened up with a sigh. His water fong blade was almost melted, and his chakra was completely drained. He dispelled the water fong blade and reached inside his jacket. He had several hidden detonating tags, designed to be instantly activated with a single hand seal. *, too bad my son didn't wake up after all. *, looks like I'm going to hell with his deadbeat dad. *, I wonder if Needle and Iruka miss me. *, hope Needle can live a good life with Iruka. I'm not ready. Yi-san and her scorching fireballs were closing in, and she wore a sickly excited look. Umino grinned, his hand tightening around the detonating tags. Scorching release, steaming murder. Umino's eyes shot open. He stumbled back, pulling his hand out of his jacket and shaking it. A familiar voice called out, shouting the name of a jutsu that wasn't his. A familiar figure charged toward Yi-san, followed by fireballs, and two kunai clashed. The fireballs collided, erupting in sparks. Through the bursts of fire, the figure and Yi-san stood locked in a stalemate, their kunai grinding against each other. It was Kakuzu. Umino rubbed his eyes in disbelief. It was his eldest son. He was awake, and he'd awakened the scorching release. Escaping techniques can be learned, but the bar is extremely high. Even mastering the chakra properties and changes of related attributes to the extreme is just a prerequisite. It usually takes years of hard work under an experienced teacher, but Kakuzu had awakened the scorching release on his own after just a few exchanges with Yitsang. Yitsang gasped, "Scorching release? You're using scorching release?" Kakuzu didn't reply. He'd seen his father's beaten-up state and burned arms when he charged in. "You're gonna pay." Kakuzu growled. "Ha! That's what I want to tell you." Yitsang felt a strange happiness at the hatred in Kakuzu's words. "Humph." Kakuzu focused on the fight. Yitsang was slender, but she was still an adult, and Kakuzu was at a disadvantage in close combat. Plus, Kakuzu felt a sharp pain in his abdomen with every movement. He had to end this quickly. He couldn't use water release against Yitsang. Fire and wind release would be ineffective, and lightning and earth release weren't as effective as water. Even if they used water release, his and his father's skills were evenly matched. Their water release wasn't sea release, and the evaporation, burning, and high-temperature effects of scorching release were problematic, but now Kakuzu could use scorching release, and it wasn't the beginner level Yitsang thought. He had copied her mastery. The moment he copied the scorching release, Kakuzu learned Yitsang's signature move, Oversteaming Kill. He could feel himself refining scorching release chakra at any time. He could give Yitsang a few surprises. Kakuzu made a one-handed seal, took a deep breath, and gently exhaled towards the kunai locked with Yitsang's. Scorching release chakra shot from his mouth, enveloping the kunai, and the flames erupted. Bang! Yitsang saw the change in Kakuzu's kunai and released her own to retreat. Kakuzu felt the heat of the flames and waved the burning release kunai with satisfaction. Unlike others who simply added fire release chakra to their kunai, burning release wrapped around his without burning it. Yitsang, who was so close to the burning release kunai, felt the difference. The kunai locked with Kakuzu's had been burned into scrap metal in seconds. The explosion of burning release emitted scorching energy. Kakuzu shamelessly borrowed a name from an anime he'd watched in his past life and called his move, Burning Release, Flowing Blade Like Fire. Inspired by his wind release, Vacuum Blade wrapped wind release chakra around a kunai or ninja sword, creating a sharp blade. Now, Flowing Blade Like Fire was a deadly flame knife. With the consistent characteristics of burning release, it could evaporate any water it touched. Moreover, after using the move, Kakuzu felt the flow of burning release chakra and had a new idea. Looking at Yitsang, Kakuzu waved the Ryukan Ruohuo toward her. Flowing blade, as if sensing its master's will, the burning chakra separated a strand and was replenished by the chakra refined in Kakuzu's body. The separated burning release chakra sped forward, forming a crescent of energy, but this wasn't ordinary energy. It was flame energy with the characteristics of burning release. Yitsang stared in shock. He'd just awakened the scorching release, but he could already do so much. The violent energy coming from the flame sword made her wary. She teleported away, and the flowing blade struck a tree behind her. With a squeak, the tree toppled. Yitsang saw that the tree had been cleanly cut. The surface of the cut was charred, but the tree trunks near the ends had shriveled into deadwood. Instead of cutting through, the flowing blade had burned through, instantly evaporating the moisture. Flowing blade wasn't as powerful as steaming murder, but it was much faster. A tree wasn't a ninja, but the result still made Yitsang nervous. His burning release might even be better than mine. That she didn't say it aloud, but she had to admit it. Fireballs gathered around her. This was going to be a tough fight. Kakuzu saw the effects of Ryukan and was pleased. This was what flowing blade like fire was all about. He stared coldly at Yitsang and charged forward. With each step, a scorching fireball appeared around him, and he swung the blade Ruohuo. Several flowing blades shot toward Yitsang. Chapter 60 Explosion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Several scorching fireballs, like miniature suns, and a flurry of razor-sharp wind blades, all hurtled toward Yitsang with blinding speed. Bang! Yitsang, caught off guard, threw up a fireball for defense, staggering back. Jiamu's wind blades were far faster than her fireballs. A simple charged attack could be blocked by the size and power of her fireballs, but, how could this kid deflect everything she dished out? The wind blades were thin and deadly, coming in waves, closely followed by those scorching fireballs. Kakugi was using both his steam killing and wind release, blades of wind at once, making him a versatile threat. He was equally dangerous up close or at a distance, a truly balanced fighter. Before, Yitsang had countered Kuma's steam killing with her scorch release, showing no fear of any range. This had made Kazuoki deeply uneasy, unable to attack effectively, unable to defend properly, and constantly threatened. This was the Umino squad struggle, but the tables had turned, and now it was Yitsang's turn to sweat. She had a fireball attack, sure, but he had fireballs too. And those wind blades made defense nearly impossible. Kakugi was just more versatile than she was. She couldn't win this. Yitsang fought a desperate rearguard action, spamming fireballs and teleporting to dodge Kakugi's attacks, barely able to counter. Damn it! You're supposed to be a water release ninja. Where did you learn scorch release? That she barely blocked another attack only to see Kakugi conjuring a fresh barrage of scorching fireballs. Kakugi casually flicked the Ryuken Wakahu, sending more blades whistling forward. All thanks to you, Teacher Yakura, Kazuoki said with a smirk. After dodging another flurry of blades, Yitsang exploded. No way. You picked that up after just a couple of fights with me. Not even your Sharingan could copy that. Kakugi said with confidence, I'm just a genius. Weak sauce. Yitsang was livid. All the geniuses in Konoha need to die. That with a burst of speed, Yitsang closed the gap, raising her hands and channeling every last bit of chakra she had left. A massive fireball began to coalesce. Scorch release, great fire annihilation. Yitsang held the monstrous fireball, easily 30 feet across, above her head. The searing heat shriveled the leaves on the trees. With a mighty heave, she hurled the fireball at Kakugi. This thing was 3 times bigger than the one she'd used during their previous fight. Even for a Kage-level ninja like Yitsang, using such a massive jutsu after a long fight was pushing her to the brink. Kakugi remembered all too well the feeling of helplessness he'd felt the last time he faced Yitsang's great fire annihilation. But he wasn't the same shinobi now. He watched the oncoming inferno with pride swelling in his chest. Casually, he released his wind blades and wove a tiger seal. Chakra erupted within him, quickly channeling into scorch release chakra. Rings of flame appeared around him, spiraling outward at breakneck speed. From above, he looked like the center of a flaming whirlpool. Ikaku had long since retreated to the treetops. In his current state, he was useless in a fight like this. He watched Kakugi's technique with a complicated mix of awe and concern. He surpassed me. The flames around Kakugi rapidly converged in front of him, compressing into a single, massive fireball. It was a reversal, release, then gather. Kakugi's fireball wasn't as large as Yitsang's, but it was denser, packed with far more potent chakra. And its power? That would be revealed in short order. Scorch release, great fire annihilation. Kakugi thrust his hands forward, unleashing the compressed inferno at Yitsang's own. In terms of size, Kakugi's was only a fraction of the size, but with ninjutsu, size isn't everything. Concentrated power is key. Boom! The 2 fireballs collided in a cataclysmic explosion. The mushroom cloud billowed across the forest floor. The shockwave instantly leveled the surrounding trees, ripping up soil and grass. The resulting inferno incinerated everything that remained. The instant Kakugi unleashed his attack, Umino Ikaku had teleported to safety. He was now extremely thankful for his quick thinking. Being far away, it wasn't the end of the world, but even so, the shockwave almost sent him tumbling. He had to grab onto a tree to stay upright. Watching the collision of such powerful ninjutsu in the distance left Kuma hands speechless. He could hardly believe it was Kazuoki fighting Higura, but he knew Umino Ikaku didn't have fire release. Looking down at his injured limbs, he couldn't help but feel useless. The explosion even rocked the main battlefield. From afar, they could see the mushroom cloud and hear the deafening roar. Fighting stopped in many places as they stared. Luo Sha couldn't help but glance in the direction of the blast. After a moment of thought, he pinpointed the location. That's where Yitsang went. What in the world is causing that? Could she be in trouble? Luo Sha stroked his chin, musing to himself. He loathed Yi Tsang, but he desperately needed her to win. Her survival added weight to Tsunagekyu's chances. Either she's slacking off or she really did run into a strong enemy. But what is Lord Kazekage doing? Why hasn't he come yet? Luo Sha found the situation strange. Jiraiya also noticed the disturbance. That's Area 8, the Umino squad's patrol zone. Jiraiya clearly remembered sending orders for Umino to retreat before the fighting started. Judging by the distance, they should have been back long ago. Instead, he'd gotten a message from Umino Ikuku after the fighting started. There was no Sand Vanguard force in Area 8, but the current battle clearly meant the Umino squad was in trouble. Who are they fighting? A battle of this scale would take more than some run-of-the-mill elite jounin. The enemy Umino was facing had to be Kage level. Was it Yi Tsang? Or the third Kazekage? Chiyo and Ebizo weren't known for fire jutsu. Whoever it was, Umino and his squad were probably doomed. Judging by the scale of the clash, at least Umino had forced whoever it was to use their trump card, but what truly piqued Jiraiya's curiosity was which member of the Umino squad had enough guts to stand up to a Kage-level ninja. Umino Ikuku was 40, his potential was maxed. Jiraiya had a hunch, and because of that hunch, he sincerely hoped Umino and his team made it back alive. As for defeating the unknown Tsunagekyo ninja, Jiraiya didn't hold out much hope.